comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right.
Hello, Fortitude audience. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Heather Kittleson, and I am your host with my wonderful husband who sits next to me, my co-host.
Hello.
Thanks for being here, Amos.
Someone's got to round this on board, I suppose.
Someone's got to do the technical
I love
stuff.
doing this. This is great.
Yes, you do.
Every week, there's something new and interesting that just kind of catches me off guard, and I go, gosh, this is just so much fun and life-changing and interesting. And so I appreciate
the technical stuff?
The conversations.
Oh, the conversations. Yeah. Well, speaking of the conversations, we have Pete and Krista Bierman with us in the studio today. Yeah. Yes. And Pete and Krista, year ago, 2 years ago, I can't even remember how long it's been since we met.
I don't even know if it's been a year.
It's been so fun getting to know both of you.
It's been a wild ride.
It has. Your fire for the Lord and what you're doing with the servanthood heart is very admirable. Admiral? Is that the right word?
Pretty close.
Okay.
Admirable.
Admirable. Okay, there we go. I had
extra syllable.
It's awesome. Let's just go with awesome. That's just easier to say. I love how God brought us together. And I think that story is worth 30 seconds of, I was looking for some way to connect to the Southwest Minnesota area where I'm originally from to bring an event. And I wanted to find a pastor who was on fire for the Lord the way that I felt that God was calling just the environment, the feel of what the event was going to be like. And I had no idea it was going to be you, but you commented on a good friend of ours, Steph's post. And I read what you wrote and I was like, I'm going to quick Google this dude because what he said is really neat. And I saw you were from Slayton and I went, oh, and he's a pastor. This is the guy. This is who I need to connect with. And
I remember that.
We talked on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I was heading to Woodstock to the treatment center.
Conversation. Yeah.
And I was going to go speak to them. And I called you and I had to pull over on the side of the road because the conversation was so filled with fire and just Holy Spirit connection of all of it. And you were pumped about your family and I was pumped. Like it just was awesome. So here we sit now and our families have there's the four of us and we've developed such an incredible bond. It is, I really believe the way that Jesus intended church to be. And that is fellowship and community and support and love and the encouragement. And so it's been an honor fully to just be a part of your world and being at your house and right in the backyard of my old home school. And you got chickens. I mean, come on, chickens right in town. Mm-hmm. It's pretty fabulous.
Adorable.
Right behind the school gymnasium. So I just am fascinated by you guys. So let's get into it. The spirit that the two of you have in your marriage, we've all gone through a lot of stuff. And yet like where you're today is really fun. So talk about where you are today. And then we're going to get into a little bit of some of the things you all have gone through.
Fun. Oh, that's an interesting word. Yes, it's more fun than it's been for a long time now. I would say, the growth and the experience of maturing through hard conversations, arguments, fights, disagreements, just kind of communication, conversations, passing each other and not hitting the mark. All those years of trying to figure out what we've done right and what we've done wrong. We're now to a place where we feel like we might be entering into a sweeter spot than we've been for a long time.
Good. That's
nice.
I'm only going to say that for myself. I mean,
Good.
Well, because I don't speak for her, and I want to make sure that she is able to share as well. But I think that we are in a place where we feel like we even have capacity to pour into other people without feeling like, what are we doing? We don't even have all this crap together ourselves.
Yeah.
And some of it still comes from a place of humility to say, yeah, we're going through that too. And we're walking in that same fire as you are. And let us tell you what we are doing. Not that we're doing it the way that they need to do it if we were to counsel a couple or an individual, but we feel like after almost 25 years of doing this thing called marriage.
25 years?
June 26th.
Will be, wow.
25 years.
Pete, you better have something special planned.
We actually just planned it on the way here.
Oh, good.
Well, we had already an idea, but I had to backtrack because I got ahead of the conversation with her about it. And so we had to plan it together a little bit more today.
Oh, good.
And so I think we're just in a place right now where we're trying almost to we're relearning our footing with each other again.
Good.
There's been health issues in that journey. There's been trauma. There's been, for sure, emotional abuse in our story. There's been porn addiction in the early stages of our marriage, and we can talk about that if you would like. But we feel like we're now into a place where we've simplified a lot of things about our life. We have tried to keep things as foundational at home as possible.
That's a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about what's at home. Well, who are the people in your home?
We have 5 kids. And do we say names?
You can age range. What's your age range? Yeah.
We have our oldest boy, he's 20. And then we have a 18-year-old girl graduating this year. And then we have an almost 16-year-old boy. And then we have a 13-year-old girl and then an 8-year-old girl.
Big range, right?
Mm-hmm.
And trying to navigate those waters even.
Yeah.
Like
it's whiplash.
Oh, man. Every day is different. Every day they show up with something different. And you're like, who are you? What just happened?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I? Where are we going with this?
Well, it's really weird having an 18-year-old who can sometimes come across like she knows everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have an 8-year-old who you're still the center of her universe and you're just amazing and you know all the things. And so
don't go to the podcast today, Mom and Dad.
Oh.
Yeah.
More mom than dad, but yeah.
We get that.
Yeah.
Well, we've met your children and they're all really grounded. Your daughter who's graduating, meeting her, and I would love for you guys to talk a little bit about what you do and what you own, like the things you own and what you're involved in, because you not only just have 5 children, but you have a lot more going on. So marriage itself is a trip all in itself, and the ups and downs and roller coasters. But then you throw in business owning and a church. I mean, so I'd love for you to tell a little bit more complexity of like where you're at, like just what y'all do.
Sure. You want to share? You want me to share? I'm willing to.
You're the cook.
I'm
right. You're the cook, Krista.
She's not really the cook anymore. I mean, when we started,
when we moved to our Southwest Minnesota from Colorado in 2016, and to get closer to his family. Yeah. That was the goal. And then at the same time, hey, we're going to start a church. It was kind of already started. And then
it was a small group Bible study at that point.
Right.
And they had asked me to kind of help launch it because they didn't really know how to plant a church and how to do a 501c3 and all of those things that you think you need to do legally. But
we started a church. In essence, it was a church plant, and Pete was pastor. I had just had a baby when we just moved, and so that's where my
youngest was like 4 months old
when we moved, and
wow,
and now she's 8. So
that was a journey. And then in the beginning of 17, let's buy a coffee house.
Well, and that, can I say something? That journey was wild because I was still finishing up a healthy closure of the small church ministry I was doing out in Colorado. And so I was driving back and forth between Southwest Minnesota and Northern Colorado for about 2 months.
Oh. Wow. It's a long drive.
Planting that church, doing ministry a little bit, trying to get it off the ground before October, which was kind of around our official launch, that mid-October time for 3 Church, and then finishing up things I wanted to have good closure with in Colorado. So there was times when she was home by herself during the week.
But I didn't know many people because I I didn't grow up there like
Yeah.
he had, and
Right.
his mom and dad were nearby, but
Which
I was
was nice. That
single
helped.
parenting by myself and
Yep.
going through postpartum depression and
Ooh.
trying to take care of the people
Yeah.
in a
In a whole new town.
whole new town and home with bats. And
So yeah.
Oh.
We had bats in our attic.
No.
And had to take care of those. And
Yep.
all of those things that were happening in a house that was new and
Mm-hmm.
a town that was new. New baby.
Did you go reluctantly, Krista, or did you knowing?
I did go reluctantly. I just felt like I was always behind the ball. But naturally, because the pregnancy itself was a little tricky, that was my most trickiest one.
Mhm.
Was my last one. And so bedridden and all the things. And then my heart is, I love adventure. And then, hey, if God's willing that, sure. And we were supposed to be a part of the farm and help his parents out. Great. And then, but I wasn't really a part of the ministry conversations. I wasn't really a part of any of the new, just naturally, just because of how life played out. And so I feel like I'm just now, because I was also really sick for 4 years here, that it's like, I feel like I'm finally like getting involved in our church and understanding and feeling more a part of it. So
Yeah.
This is a recent development for you? You said you were
being
sick for
healthy.
about 4 years. Are you on the tail end?
This is the
of that?
healthiest I've been for 4 years.
You look fabulous.
Thank you. Been working
Yeah.
hard.
You do.
That's great.
Yes, thank you.
And your hair's not purple.
Not today. No.
And it's growing.
Yeah.
Good.
Her hair was
Yeah.
not growing for a
Yeah.
long
I
time.
lost a lot of hair.
I was
and-
very concerned about that.
Oh.
But yeah. I'm
Was it an
back.
energy level thing?
There was a variety of things that were going on. So found out I had Hashimoto's. When we found out I was really sick,
Thyroiditis?
I didn't have any iron in my blood.
Uh-huh.
And apparently you need iron to like live.
Yeah.
So it was bad. Like I couldn't even walk. I mean, the iron helps you with your energy and just the energy that you need to sit up or energy to walk or whatever. So that started, found out I had Hashimoto's, which is where the immune system attacks the thyroid. And then it just seemed to, and then I got COVID at least once within that too. So it's hard to know what was my body crashing, but I got to live in the autoimmune lifestyle for about 4 good years and learn so much about my Heavenly Father and also just about that world. So, and other people, connecting with other people who have autoimmune or who are chronically ill. So, I am okay that I don't have to live there anymore. I still get little reminders of, hey, remember that time my body's telling me, when you couldn't walk? And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, I couldn't walk for a while. I was in a wheelchair, used a cane. He'd have to carry me sometimes because my bedroom was on the 2nd floor. He'd have to carry me because I just couldn't do it. And so there was a part of my youngest daughter's life where she just remembers me just being in bed and us watching movies. And so her upbringing has definitely been different. So
I've known you for like a year. I just had no idea this was going on so recently in your life.
For sure. Yeah, it's been a journey.
I sympathize very much because I'm just about about a month and a half into something very similar where some sort of it's autoimmune or somewhere in between immune issues where I was eating all these things and my body's reacting to them through cross reactivity and it sucked all my energy out.
yeah.
And it you just don't know this is happening. You don't know why you're tired all the time until you fix it. And you're like, okay, time to get some stuff done. So we've been doing landscaping the last couple of weekends. It's been great. So
It's great when you get energy. You're like, I'm back. Yeah.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
It
Really great.
is
I'm super thankful.
a huge thing.
Yeah.
It's so wild because, going back to kind of the timeline you were asking about, we officially launched 3 Church in October of 2016. We bought the coffee house that we own called the Plaid Moose. It wasn't the Plaid Moose when we bought it, but that was February of 2017. And within 2.5 years, she got sick.
Oh.
So,
And then hindsight, my body was telling me I'm pretty in tune with my body, but
yeah.
I had just had a baby. Your body does weird things.
Yeah.
Baby number 5. I was in my 40s. So I now that, hindsight's 2020.
But I mean, the amazing time that our staff has given to us and we've had a variety of staff come through the doors to work for us at the Plaid Moose, we wouldn't have been able to keep our business going without staff stepping in, where Krista was running the show on many, many levels.
Mm-hmm.
And I stepped in, but that's not necessarily my forte. My forte is more behind the scenes, the fixer of things, the maintenance, the, design work for quite a while at the beginning of the business and the ministry too. I mean, I'm kind of the creative person for both of those. Was at the beginning, I should say, specifically for both 3 Church and the Plaid Moose. But when Krista got sick, my focus had to shift to working the restaurant and then running and then helping at home and then making sure the staff were good. Because there were literally seasons over that 2 or 3 year period when she was really sick, where she did not have the capacity to even physically do anything for the Plaid Moose. It was very hit and miss, and I would say more miss than hit.
It was, I got up, yay.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I was able to dress myself, yay.
Wow.
While we're doing, now, I mean, this is just a number I throw out to people to help them understand that we call them our loved locals in Slayton, and the people that go to Lake Chautauqua up there in that area every year. I mean, the Love Locals have supported us so much where we're like $1.5 million revenue over 8 years in this tiny little coffee house.
Yeah.
I look back at the numbers now and think, wow, look at what God has done in the area of just a thriving business, even in the midst of COVID and the insanity that it has been.
Yeah.
And some months our business are like, I don't even know if we're going to stay open.
Yeah.
Just relate to that.
with all of the things that you deal with life and health and people's revenue and the economy and everything. I mean, we've been through all of it with the business, and the church is a whole different animal because you're now dealing with ministry for people. It's a coffee house fellowship, and so it's very different than your brick and mortar Lutheran and Catholic tradition.
And we should point out that the church is held in the Plaid Moose.
Right.
So they're highly integrated, the two of those.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can just sell the Plaid Moose to keep the church.
Very much so. Yeah. We've wrestled with that a lot. Like, when the church had seasons of major struggle, we're thinking, well, we could walk away from this and feel like we've done a great job and the Plaid Moose would still be there.
Or vice versa.
We're like, but we might have to let go of the Plaid Moose and think, well, where does our church fellowship go?
Yeah.
And so we've wrestled with that often privately, quietly with just each other, because some of those pearls you have to be really careful about throwing to anyone else. And so I think we're in a place now where the business seems to be very stable. There's still things that we wonder, like, man, what's going to happen next? But it is a huge walk of faith right now to run a business, to pastor a ministry together, more and more together. Like she said, she's more, I would say, engaged than she's ever been, in the sense of just, she kind of knows her role. And my heart growing up in ministry over, I don't know what this is, 27 or 28 years now of doing ministry. My heart was always to let her not feel the weight of having to be a part of it. I mean, I was a youth pastor for 15 years, and there were many times when youth ministry was at night in the evening.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I did not expect her ever to be right there with me, leading youth ministry, small groups, or being up front, or because we were raising young children too. I didn't expect that. And so part of what she was alluding to earlier was there were just times when I did get ahead of her in the ministry, especially like, hey, we're doing this, and I'm working in a large church with 50 staff members, and we're just moving forward as a church, and I'll be home in the evening at this time, but we'll go to church together on Sundays, and you're not in the ministry
So
in the
it felt
sense
separate?
of, so it felt very much like we weren't hand in hand on a regular basis, not necessarily because I didn't want her to be there. That's just the nature of what I was doing for so long in ministry. And then there were just a lot of times making decisions in ministry it was me as the pastor of a small church later on in life and doing ministry. And I still felt a deep desire to just let her have her own autonomy and space away from being a pastor's wife. We had situations over the course of all the ministry years we've done where, there was expectations put on her that I thought were unhealthy. Like, well, your wife doesn't play piano. I mean, things like that.
Yeah.
Because the pastor's wife should play piano. And then also the negative side where there was a short season where we worked in a few small churches, and one specifically that I think of where she helped lead worship. And I'd asked her at the end of that worship gathering to close in prayer. And that ended up with her being in an elder meeting for like an hour and a half.
They reamed me.
Oh,
women don't
criticizing
pray in
her
public.
of praying in public.
And he was outside playing with the teens.
And I was like, what is going on? So we've had, such a wide swath of experience in ministry where now we just have such a beautiful fellowship of people, just a biblically based, let's keep it simple. Some people love it who have come and stayed, and some people have come and left because they're like, I'm looking for something more. Or you don't have a children's ministry, you don't have a youth ministry because we just kind of include everybody in the worship gathering. And some people leave. And so you just have to process that in a small town. Like, yeah, this is a coffee house fellowship. It's not necessarily a setting that everybody enjoys, but the people who call it home, it is their home.
Yeah.
So
it's been a wild ride for that.
Our pastor, he said this in sermons. He goes, I love you guys, but y'all pay in the butt. He self-admits that. And people are messy, and people are incredibly opinionated. And so much like people who like to staple their toe to the floor and start a small business, you know what I mean? Like, why would you do that to yourself? Because it's hard, but we have a reason. So the same thing with the church. What is just the core thing that gets you out of bed and keeps you motivated for the church?
How many years ministry? You said it's been since you guys got married.
Yeah. I mean, we even before we were married, because I was preaching in that little church I was talking to you about early on when I was still in college, when we were still at Bible college. And so we didn't get married until a couple of years into us already being involved in ministry. And
Back in 1999.
So you guys knew.
And just serving. We were serving this little fellowship that needed a weekend preacher from the Bible college. And so we started serving that little church fellowship. And then between my senior year and my junior year, we decided to go to Kentucky for about 2 years. And we did an extended youth ministry out there, period of just getting our feet wet in the actual, full-time ministry world. And then we came back to Bible college. I finished my senior year in, the spring of 2002, right? Like it was.
Krista's like,
well, it was after 9/11. We were still in Kentucky during 9/11, and then we moved back to Nebraska to the Bible college we were attending, and I finished my spring semester. I had one semester left because I wanted to get my feet wet in full-time ministry. And there was a lot of good, but there's a lot of hard because you're just young, naive. You just don't know. And we were newly married, going far away from family in Kentucky.
With a lot of baggage.
And a lot of baggage.
And so, lots of baggage, lots of history.
Go there.
Yeah.
Because you guys were newly married and you weren't in a honeymoon stage because necessarily you had a lot going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I alluded to earlier was, I was introduced to pornography when I was a junior in high school. And so I struggled heavier and heavier into pornography through that entire season. So high school, end of my high school time, into Bible college, still struggling with lust and pornography. And then into my marriage, the first 3 years of our marriage, really, because 2002 was when just broke, laid my ring on the dresser, didn't feel worthy of staying in this marriage. There's no reason why I should, because I'm just not a clean, healthy person. and went to a local village inn, and a pastor friend of ours found me sitting there contemplating what to do next, and kind of talked me back off the ledge. To put it in a term, I wasn't suicidal, but it felt like I don't really know where to go from here, because I know that I am called to do ministry, but not like this.
Yeah.
And not hiding like that. How long had you been married?
So we had been married since the June of 99.
And how long had you been married at this point when you went to the? This
would have been about 3 years, because it would have been right at the end of my spring semester, finishing college.
And this is still in Kentucky?
So we were back in Nebraska at that point.
Okay.
Krista, what were you going through? Like, did you know going into your marriage that he had? So it was the hidden addiction. Yep.
No clue.
Secret.
Okay. How did it come out?
He told me. I came home. It's kind of ironic because we were living in Nebraska. I wasn't going to finish my degree. I wasn't very good about being in the classroom. But so I kept getting job after job. People were offering me jobs. I was working 3 jobs. He was going to finish his degree, and he couldn't get a job for the life of him. Not that he's not capable, not that he doesn't have a good work ethic. It's just God would shut every single door. He tried shoe sales for 2 days, I think, and that wasn't for him. But it was as if God was saying, you got some other stuff you need to put your time and energy into. So I just remember that night specifically, I come home and he walks past me, and then there's a note in his ring on the dresser. And I come from a very broken past, I guess you could say. And so that was kind of freaked me out, that's
abandonment.
Yeah, for sure.
So her husband is now showing abandonment.
And you hadn't you guys hadn't had any run-ins, or you didn't have suspicions? Like, you had zero
I had
knowledge.
Zero suspicions.
Until you saw that ring.
I didn't even know what that meant, because the ring was on there. And I was like, what? I know we were having a hard time. And I think, and him not being able to get a job really affected him. Because, the man is supposed to provide. That was what his process was.
Growing up on a dairy farm, you learn hard work. That's how you live. Hard work.
It was a little tricky. It was tricky at home. The gal's got the 3 jobs and is paying. Even there was times we didn't know how we were going to get groceries, and God would provide groceries on our doorstep. I mean, that literally happened. And so, I didn't know. I did call out to our friend, and he went and found him. This is before, GPS and find my friend or whatever.
So what did the note say? It said what you said, like, I'm not worthy.
Oh gosh, I'm sure it said something similar to that.
He said I deserve better. I know that was one of them.
Told Krista that she deserved better.
No, no intel on the pornography piece. Just you deserve better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, because the hard thing is, and this might be true for several men that are listening, is the hard thing is that a lot of men who deal with pornography, and I've learned this over the years working with other men and finding out their stories, they love their wife with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. But they also realize how attracted they are just to women in general, for the most part, And so it's not like I was just looking for an affair.
Yeah.
But I was committing adultery with my eyes every day. And it may not have been every day. It just may have been the days where you get lazy.
Yeah.
And you get complacent, and you're just like, well, I don't have anything else to do. I guess I'll just search,
It's a rabbit hole.
And the internet was interesting back then, because the internet was so different in 2002 before the iPhone in 2006, right? I mean, the internet was so different.
Yeah.
It took more effort back then too. So to do the effort and to keep it secret from your wife, and it probably subconsciously to a lot of men at that time in history may have been even like a challenge.
Yeah.
And so I can speak that openly now, because I'm 20 years healed by God's grace through it all and her forgiveness. It definitely comes to a place where you just feel gross.
Yeah.
And it has to either be cut out, fall off, burned off, whatever it takes to literally prune everything out of your life, your eyes, your heart, your mind. The mind is the hardest part with pornography.
Well, and it doesn't help that it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Like it doesn't even have to be, you don't have to search for it. It's it's on billboards. It's everywhere.
Right.
That it's like, hey, look here.
Hints toward it now are everywhere. You
Yeah.
know, it's way more of a soft porn world that we live in now.
That's a good way of putting it. There's hints towards it everywhere. Hey, don't forget, there's this thing that's guys think really interesting.
Yeah, Amos
right around the corner.
And it's for
very
women too
honest
now.
about that.
There's hints towards it towards women a lot more now too.
Yeah.
As well. But
Krista, so when you find him, the friend is sent to the hotel and he finds him and brings him home. What did you go through when he shared that with you?
It wasn't that night or whatever you shared that with me. I just remember I had come home from work, and I think it happened that week. And then you said, I have something to tell you. In our little college marriage apartment housing.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was a long night into the early morning of
and
a conversation.
I didn't have any ill will. I didn't, obviously God gave me what I needed for that moment. And part of it too, I was kind of clueless, really fully on porn. I was introduced to it a little bit when I was little. I had Playboys, but it wasn't a part of my life at all, really. So, but he shared how long it's been through this whole time that I've known him. And I was able to forgive him that night and offer forgiveness.
But had to build tremendous amount of trust back.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's hard work and worth the work. And you have to own that.
Yeah.
Because you realize it could have been any other type of addiction that you still would have to own and build trust back. But this one almost at times in my own heart and mind felt even more personal towards her because it's other women you're looking at and the questions of not being enough, the questions of, are you still doing it even though it was exposed tonight, are you going to go back to it because you were able to keep it so secret before? You know, those types of conversations and building accountability with other men in my life, men that I trust, men that I knew would walk with me without judgment, but they would be there for accountability and discipline. Because I think that's the challenge we live in now in this world is, you know, discipline and accountability sometimes comes across as, well, you're just going to judge me. And like, no, I just want you to know this is going to be hard work. Discipline and accountability, especially among men, is really rare.
Yeah.
To have a group of men to sit there and say, you need to work on that. I love you, but you need to work on that.
Mm-hmm.
Or you need to cut that out of your life right now. If you want to save your marriage, it needs to go now. And I think that's the process that I'm a mental processor, sometimes to the point of stress and anxiety on myself. And so it took many, many years to even not walk in the guilt and shame of, I used to do that.
Yeah.
And it affected our marriage, even in our communication. It definitely was something that we needed to work through. So.
What would be some advice? You just gave some great advice about finding support, making sure that you are with people who are going to walk it with you and help hold you accountable. But from the standpoint of pornography, I believe it's more in the ministry world than people are aware. I'm hearing more and more stories. I heard another one last night, and it's more excused. It's more like, well, it's just a little bit. It's not a big deal. My wife knows. Or people are just more forgiving in the allowing. And from the biblical,
or putting the word ethical in front of it.
Yeah, it's ethical porn.
So it's like ethical slavery.
There was just
or killing.
Yeah.
Does that make it okay?
It's so far, the truth is stretched so far. And so you got to have truth and grace. You can't have just grace. And I feel like our world is living on this world of like grace and excusing things.
Grace to the point of almost where it's tainted with tolerance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right.
So being in the full-time ministry world that we all are, I'm personally at a place of just bold truth, bold radical obedience, radical faith, radical all of it. Like I know that you're there too. People don't find that very fun. People they tend to either gravitate towards it or completely repel it. Right? Are you feeling that same sense?
Yeah, for sure. I think there are challenges ahead for the church in general, but for pastors specifically, who are not willing to go there with their flocks, their fellowships.
Yep.
And I think what you alluded to about the exposure of many pastors struggling with pornography or other addictions or other struggles, these stories of fallen pastors all over the nation who had affairs, things like that. I think what we're dealing with is something that I preached on a couple of weeks ago in this series that we've been doing called Scripture's Gone Rogue. And one of the most misused scriptures is talking about the whole, don't judge me or you'll be judged, Well, the concept there is misunderstood because of the fact that it's a projection. Like, hey, I see the speck in your eye, but don't you dare call out the plank in mine. And pastors are really good about doing that. If they're not healthy, they can, and again, I'm speaking from experience, when you're not a healthy pastor, you're a pastor who is living in a dark place, moments of your week, and then you try to go preach a sermon, God eventually is going to be like, it's really weird that you are talking about that when you're not willing to deal with it yourself.
Yeah.
And so what it does for me is it clears my conscience to be able to preach more bold and be more straightforward about things that, look, if we don't talk about this sometime down the road, and it could be tomorrow or a week or a year, this is going to kill you. And I don't want you to die from this. And that's where, for me as a pastor now, I'm in a place where, what's the gospel? It's the good news that while you were still a sinner, Christ died for you. And the thing that's killing you is your sinfulness. The thing that is going to bring you life is the gospel of Jesus Christ. So I'm going to come at you out of love. Like, I'm not swinging. I'm not kicking you out because you're not perfect. I'm just telling you, you allow that to fester any longer, it's going to be problems for you.
Yeah.
And I just am so passionate about telling people like it is. And the part that I have learned being back in Minnesota is there is definitely a tangible spirit of let's just get along. Let's just be nice. You've heard the Minnesota nice term, but Minnesotans who've actually grown up in the Midwest, and I don't think it's just a Minnesota thing. I think it's a Midwest thing.
Yeah, it is.
The niceness that, and I follow a guy on often, he has a podcast as well. He talks about, there are a lot of believers who try to be nicer than God. And where actually God would do a lot harder work on you than we are willing to do. And so that's the challenge of how do we keep a fellowship that's accountable, disciplined, but yet loving through it all. Yeah.
You can have compassion and you can listen and you can seek to understand what they're going through. But at the end of the day, the more and more enablement and the more codependent, the just smoothing things over, that absolutely gets people nowhere. I mean, it's where we are in our world today with you be you and you do you and yeah, you and
your truth.
Yeah. But
I think my greatest fear, honestly, I've been processing what my greatest fear is right now, because it used to be like, oh, I don't want to, lose my wife. I don't want to lose my kids. I don't want to lose my marriage. That used to be one of my greatest fears, right? My greatest fear now is that 15 years from now, 25 years from now, I mean, I'm 46. So 25 years from now, that someone would come up to me who was a part of, I don't even care if it's just one sermon on one Sunday, that someone would come up to me and say, why didn't you tell me?
Yeah.
Why didn't you saw it? Why didn't you say something about it? Yep. Because you had all of the tools in front of you. You knew the gospel. You knew scripture well enough. I'm not a perfect theologian or scholar, but I can tell you, I see things, I discern things in people because I know what to look for because of my own broken part of my story. And so that is my greatest fear, is that I would have dropped the ball with someone who, and I hope that they will understand that when I do say maybe something more sharp edged in love toward them, that it's because I don't want you 20 years from now coming back to me and saying, you had a chance to tell me and you never told me.
Yeah. Yep. That happens to me right now. When I share my story and there's someone in the audience who knew me from the past, they'll come forward and they'll be like, I had a suspicion that maybe you were drinking too much, or like at the parties, you just had this extra, I wished I would have said something. I would, cause I'm like, no one, I mean, if they did, I wasn't paying attention, but it's like the conviction piece, it may just be how it's always been, but it doesn't have to be. There is a different way. And for people to open their eyes and say, there is a better way. There is. You don't have to live like this.
Absolutely.
I think just the awareness, just bringing awareness to it. I just spoke to 75 people, and that was my message today, was we don't have to just continue the same bad behavior. We have the right and it's like we get to choose to live differently and more boldly and in peace and joy. And like, I love being on this side. It's fun.
Oh, it's way more enjoyable.
It's so much fun.
It's way more enjoyable living free, working through still things for sure, because you're an imperfect human being, but to not be hiding anything.
Yeah. Oh,
the freedom of not having to be like, I'm not hiding anything. It's just what it is. And we're going to try to get through this.
Yeah.
That is an amazing feeling. And once you get there, you never want to lose that.
Yeah.
And that in itself is a good motivator.
For sure.
The bondage in that is really gross. That was probably the most, like the day that they had a little mini intervention with me. I remember the relief my body felt from just letting go of all the things, right? Like the day, that long night with Krista, it sucks, but when you get through it. So when it comes to your guys' marriage, your family, pastor's wife, your business owners, there's so many different complexities of what you all have going on. And you're trying, as we wrap up here, I want to speak to the youth in our world, the youth. Like they're so beautiful and vulnerable right now. And you also have a beautiful passion and mission to reach the youth. And right now you're building a big, you bought the old Ben Franklin in Slayton, and you are in renovation right now, and you're restoring this big, beautiful building to become an event center,
right,
and a gathering space and an ice cream shop. And you're bringing something so beautiful to a small town in Southwest Minnesota area for people to come together, to bring youth together, to worship, to learn about God. And if anybody feels called to that same area, you guys are that same, what's the
boots on the ground?
Well, the youth. I'm just like the group, like that era. What are they? Gen Z?
Gen Z, next generation.
Yeah, I
don't really call them Gen Z because it's the next generation. I mean, I think there's a lot of older high school students, early college age, that still feel very much like they are looking for purpose. They need something to redirect their steps.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily feel like they're getting it from home, and at least not on the majority, anymore. And
they're getting more worldly than they are godly. They're getting, I've been interviewing young girls for the event that I'm doing here in Sioux Falls, and listening to their cry. There is a cry coming out of them saying, it is so overwhelming what is happening in our schools and all the things, the confusion. And it's like, for us to be able to say, no more. Like, there's no reason for our kids to be so confused when their identity lies fully in Christ and what he created them to be and to do. And just, there's so much beauty in that. And so it's like, we can keep it simple. We need space. We need places to go. We need places for our kids to go and to meet these incredible humans that'll speak into their lives. And so I love what you're doing. I know you still need support. You need more finances to finish up this building, to make it happen. So for anyone who listens to this, I I would encourage you and just put a plug in that what you're doing is an incredible thing. It's good for our youth, but it's good for the community, for commerce, for the things that would be coming to that whole entire area. What you're able to bring, you have a big vision. You have a big city heart. Like you see big visions that scare people. And I love it. Like it just lights me up, because if you're not doing something crazy, you've said this to me, Amos, if you're not doing something crazy, you're not doing something right. Or if people don't think you're crazy, then you're kind of just, you need to go do something crazy. You're coasting. You're just existing. You're comfortable. Mm-hmm. And so I fully support what y'all are doing. We both do. And I'm excited to step foot on that stage when it's done. Mm-hmm. Like I can't wait to pour in. And
I can't either. It's hard to envision it yet, because you just see the studs, and the framing of the walls and the open space, and you're thinking, man, someday this room will be filled with worshipers. This space will be filled with even a wedding reception of people celebrating the covenant of marriage, and weekend retreats, conferences, community events, just celebrating life of someone that maybe passed away in the community that was loved, but they don't have a big enough space to meet, whatever it may be.
Because you're looking at like 400 people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will fit for sure 300.
Okay, yeah. So 300.
I mean, standing room, you could probably fit 500 teenagers in there. I mean, you could. It's a big space.
Awesome Christian.
Mosh pit the Christian music.
Yes, it can happen.
I've seen it.
I was doing it in my living room all by myself this morning.
If you never grew up with DC Talk, I've seen it. So,
Yes, that is true. So just if you have the means and you want your name on it, you've even said, you're like, if a donor came along and said, I want my name on this as a legacy, you're like, just bring it. I just want to finish it. And so
as long as they're in line, with the mission and the values. I mean, we're going to be faith and family focused. We're going to be really focused on the next generation. I mean, the ice cream shop is an honorable memorial to my dad, who was a dairy farmer. Yeah. And it's connected to the Plaid Moose. We're going to have a foyer that connects right directly into the coffee house. So it's all marketplace ministry to us. We feel like Jesus needs to be all over our daily. And so we're doing that in our business. Yeah. And so whether it's a wedding or a conference or a weekend women's retreat, men's retreat, whatever, that's where we're at. We just want to see God be glorified in our small region. And the reality is that our small community has a lot of older generation that live there, and they're a blessing. They have a lot of resources, but it's not about that. It's about the fact that I think in 15 to 20 years, they're all going to be gone. And what happens to a lot of our small rural towns in this area, this region, when that generation is gone and we have a next generation, which is us, really, to say, how are we carrying those torches well? Yeah. Maybe even better on some levels, and hopefully not worse.
Agree. So. I think that's an incredible wrap up. I am grateful for both of your ministries. I'm grateful for just everything you're doing. It's been it's a lot of time to be serving. And there's a lot of up and downs in ministry, but we're all the way to the end. All the way to the end.
Can I say one thing? Finish with one thing. Yes. There's no way that I would be able to do what I do without my wife.
Oh, absolutely. That's why
and being a support. Yeah. Because there's just, through all the stuff that we've been through, there's just no way I would have the strength to go home. Yeah.
And don't give up. I always say, like, in marriage, Amos and he could have given up on me when we were going through our hard times. I feel like the getting through the storm, like a buffalo man, run through that sucker head on to get to the other side. Cause it really honestly is clear skies and blue and beautiful. And if you can fight through every single storm like that and knowing that the other side of it is just so beautiful.
Yeah. Like, I feel so bad for people who just feel like there's nothing to do but get a divorce. They think that's the solution. And if they could stay together for another year or two or something, I'm not talking about situations of abuse and whatnot, but get through the things, the disagreements, and then get on the other side and all the joy that comes with that. We've been through it. You guys have obviously been through it. You're talking about how you're in some of the best years of your life. That's beautiful, but it took a long time to get there. And had you stopped and basically restarted thinking the grass is greener on the other side, you would never be in this green grass field, would you? Mm-hmm. And so my encouragement to our listeners is just don't give up. If you've got to get to a safe place, get to a safe place. But don't give up. Find counseling, find help, find resources, find mentors, find people who can hold you accountable, because you can get through this. Mm-hmm. And it's so good. Heather and I, you and I are so good. We're happy. We're really happy.
I can't even joke about that because we just are. I was going to try to find something funny, but it's yeah. It's don't give up.
Don't give up.
Thank you.
Don't give up. And hug a pastor.
Yes.
Because people are messy. Like, give
my
them a hug.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is hilarious. And hug a pastor. Yes.
For
hug
sure.
us. Hug us.
I mean, I
Give
guess
it
if
to us.
they're huggers, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
That we need it. We need the encouragement, because especially the ones of us who are not shrinking back, who aren't just going through the motions of being a pastor, but who are putting themselves out there and saying, here's the word. This is what the word says.
Yeah.
Here's where it contradicts the world. And I know that, and this is not popular.
Yeah.
But living like this will change your life.
Where you do the most work, the heaviest work, you will meet the most adversary. It's a magnetic, it's a polarization. The more plus you are, the more negative there will be in the spiritual world. Isn't that true? Mm-hmm. And so I feel like you're experiencing that today, where you're feeling that you are living in truth, and you're feeling the negative resistance to that, and that's hard. And I would just encourage you, keep being the sun, which is the truth, which is the gravity to hold. How do I say this? Like the planets in line. You're holding the truth
Gravitational
in place.
force.
And there are things trying to get away and pull away, but the bigger the gravity you are in truth, the less the planets can go away. Not the perfect analogy. I think you get what I mean.
We're all a little quiet. I'm trying. I'm following. I'm picturing it. I'm
picking up what I'm throwing down.
No, we are.
To have a center. That's what you're saying.
Just keep
You need a center.
the lighthouse.
Thank you,
Keep
everyone.
it narrow road. Narrow road. Oh, we love you, Enos. Oh, you guys, thank you. Thank you for being here and sharing your story.
Yeah. Thank you for your invite and just to be here.
Thank you.
It's a blessing.
Thanks for being here. Thank you so much for listening. We want to change lives through this podcast. And if you want to support this podcast or our guests, please see the links below for our Patreon and giving links.
And like and subscribe, and also share our podcast as much as possible. Thank you.